or treat the colonizer white people like they're treating the colonized black people. Then the first thing is the fascism. Somebody said in 1969, the Black Panther Party organized something called the National Committee to combat fascism. But what had happened up until 1969? The fact that Panthers are being killed all around this country, and no white leftists were saying that it was fascism, and then they come to the aid of the Black Panther Party. What did the Panther Party then have to do? It took the question of fascism that would motivate white people, mobilize white people, and made it their own, and put it out there and say, combat fascism, because all these people are in prison, all these people are being killed, and that was the kind of rationale for that. So you're talking about fascism. You're talking about France fought against fascism. It fought against fascism in France. So the Nazis or whatever. You see England fought against fascism and the Nazis, but at the same time, France and England were fighting against fascism. The French were killing people in Vietnam as colonial subjects. The French was controlling parts of Africa as colonial subjects. And the same thing was true with England that controlled a quarter of the world's population. Black people, brown people, etc., yellow people. That was colonialism. There was no fascism. And we get to the question of fascism when white people get in trouble. Now when white people get in trouble, they want you to fight against fascism. But the thing is, this reason this is important, this is not just semantics. Because what happens all the time is that they created a special category to deal with the oppression of white people. All the time, black people, the Mexican people whose land was a fascism that stole half of Mexico, that was colonialism that did that. But if the Mexican people have stopped the fight against fascism, they still be, and they still are colonized today. And the same thing is true of all the colonies. So it's not into semantics. And it's really important. The coalition is an anti-colonial organization that recognizes the centrality for black people of our own oppression. The centrality of black people of our own oppression. And that's part of what made this meeting, this conference, so important to us. I want to say that I would hope that people, I also want to say this, we're a revolutionary organization. We never made any pretense about that. Before anybody was talking about revolution, subsequent to the Black Revolution of the 1960s, after people searched for it, I said, revolution is the only solution. That is what it's going to take to make us free. That's why somebody said, well, no one organization can lead us out of that. No one organization can lead us out of this. But one organization can and does lead the revolutionary struggle against the colonial domination. In the same way Garvey did it, didn't mean that there were no other forces out there, but he built an international organization of black people. That anybody who was really serious about the question of the oppression of African people recognize the significance of Marcus Garvey. And all of the people who attacked Garvey by saying, well, you can't do one organization good, but one organization was good. I just want to say finally that I hope that we will look at some things that have occurred that point us to success. I've heard, comments Jacques Rudy and other people who participate in this comment what's happening to black people, and even comment Dawood when he just made his presentation, and he was talking about how the white people doing this and white people doing that. And that's why I say, yes, we can demand reparations from white people. From white people, yes, and because there's a profound self-criticism that's absolutely necessary for white people. And the white people who know that they are engaged in serious class struggle against white oppressor must unite with the question of reparations. I'm not telling you this is an abstract concept. You know that from the I'm not saying this. I'm saying that we've been involved in reparations. White people organized first tribunal on reparations for African people. I said, the African Socialist Party did this in 1982 in Brooklyn, New York. And we put the U.S. government on trial for all of their abuses and committed against black people. And we decided, and that tribunal was an international panel of jury, that the United States government owed black people in this country a minimum of $2.1 trillion. That was 1982, and that was just for labor alone. And since that time, we have been collecting reparations. We ain't got it yet from the government, but we still somehow independent economic development project that's been paid for by white people who we organized, who exist in more than 130 some odd cities in the United States, more than 30 some odd states in the United States, and they make their contributions on a regular basis. The economic development programs from you don't have to wait for nothing. The people, the power is in the people. That's what the power and the people in the process of struggling against colonialism. There's somebody coming there's somebody in St. Louis. I won't call it name. That name they said, well, what we gonna do? Because where they get their money from? How they get the white people to pay their money? Because the white people have been trying to understand under the leadership of Black Power. You don't do this on your own. Under the leadership of Black Power, they come to understand that they have to organize and fight for reparations. They go to their community to fight for reparations. They go and challenge the banks and other kinds of institutions to get reparations under our leadership. And I'm making comments on because he knows some of the stuff that's being developed right there in St. Louis. And this is the consequence of reparations being paid. So the question is, how are we going to get reparations? And we're saying that nobody's off the hook for what they've done to Black people. And the truth of the matter is that I mentioned the Delmar divide in St. Louis. South of Delmar, you have like white people and some upper these persons. But north of Delmar, where African people are concentrated and starving in literal sense of the word, we've created economic development projects there that the community can participate in, and we're helping the people understand that the reason they're not in your refrigerator in North St. Louis versus their refrigerator. Somebody said you got to show them who to shoot at, but the question is that you see this high intensification of violence among our own people because we don't know who got our stuff. And so we shoot each other over crumbs and what have you, while everything that belongs to us is a south of Delmar in the city of St. Louis anyway. Anyway, it's been an extraordinary meeting. And I want to just say that the work that these comrades are doing to free these political prisoners, there's nothing more valuable than that. And the work that comrades understood by the leadership that we see coming from out of Louisiana. Louisiana's bad thing. I've been there with Sister Belinda Cross. I've been to the courthouse because I couldn't believe it. In the 21st century, I couldn't believe it. Going into that courthouse, how they function. But that's Sister Belinda Cross. She just walked right on in there and defied everything they said she's supposed to do. I mean, she brought that kind of leadership and she's fought them tooth and nail on the ground. She's not somebody who just got a good conversation. She is actually involved in real struggle in the world. That's why I'm so appreciative of her. And the majority of the people who participated in this look at Khalid Rahim. I mean, we don't all have the same politics. I disagree with some things they say, whatever. That's not the point. We unite in principle. We unite against colonialism. And we engage in principles of unity that keep us together, fight against common enemies. That's the important thing. And we've been able to do it, comments I keep for 13 years up to now. We're going on 14. And I'm going to do it for 14 more years because like comments I keep saying, independence, freedom, liberation in our lifetime. And we say it in our lifetime, not because we are living in some fantasy world. We say it because we are determined not to leave this for another generation of people. And this concept that we feel so much, but we won't do it in our lifetime, but the other we do it. That's our responsibility to do it in our lifetime. It has to occur. So I'm thrilled by what we've seen, all the dynamics that we've seen in this process, new people coming into the coalition. We've seen extraordinary excitement with the rally, with the marches that we've just done. I want to send out a real shout to come at Marshall Adebayo, who did right here. He's the sister who's been working with this burial site issue in Bethesda, where they paving over a burial site, black burial site for our people. And she's also a major force in this city and who did so much work in media. That's why Borders was there. That's why Fox News was there and some other forces, because for this comment system seats on the ground. That's what I'm talking about, comments, RP. Forces like UFO. Forces, when I say UFO, that's Universal African People's Organization. And forces that are actually engaged in struggle and not just talking about struggle, right? And that's the thing that makes this coalition so significant. And that's the thing that makes me appreciate everybody here so much. That's the thing that makes it possible for me to say without a doubt, Black is back. Black is back.
I got so much energy.
I'm just asking, did this really happen? Did that really happen? I really look forward to this opportunity. Revolution overturns and destroys everything that gets in its way. The only way somebody can enslave you is that you don't fight back. The only way you can be enslaved and continue to be enslaved for hundreds of years is that you rather live than to fight that tyranny. There were a few of us that said we do or die. Right. That's the few of us that we were part of. Right. So now we're gonna do or die doing.
FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover today asserted that of the black extremist groups, the Black Panthers represent the greatest internal threat to the nation. In his report for fiscal year 1969, Hoover said the Panthers have perpetrated numerous assaults on police and have engaged in violent confrontations throughout the country.
See, people need to know what the Black Panther Party was about.
We want freedom. We want the power to determine the destiny of our black community. We want full employment for our people. We want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our black community. We want decent housing, fit for shelter for human beings. We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. We want all black men exempt from military service, and we want immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people. We want freedom for all black men held in federal, state, county, and city prisons and jails. We want all black people when brought to trial to be tried by a jury of their peer group. All people from their black communities as defined by the Constitution of the United States. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace.
Once Compton and South Central. These Los Angeles neighborhoods have been home to African Americans since the 1940s, when many blacks migrated here in the hope of escaping Southern racism. But when they arrived, most found that racism and poverty were inescapable. Frustrated with the
fight, some yellow man in Vietnam who ain't never called us nigger.
He said when he was in Vietnam, he said he was overrun by some VC. And on the way back, VC pointed a piece in his face and said, "Black man, what are you doing here?"
The criminal conspiracy unit of LA.
I like to teach the world to be. Don't make just like me. I like to fight the world so cold. Born in the ghetto as a street thug. At age 16, I started selling cheap drugs. Ecstasy with Culture 3. A year later, I robbed a dope house and stole a kid. 36, 700 pounds. Bag it up and make my profit.
it. The so pussy motherfucking officers trying to stop it. And the bastard that's stopping the bus is the same motherfucker that delivers to us. He's paying off the cops. Trip across in the middle and trying to get the smaller push of pop. The politicians are players. Reagan and Bush were cutting tough for Noriega. Now the juices are sour. Remember politicians, they're scheming for power.
You know what I'm saying? That's okay. That don't fly straight.
Now let's go back to the past. The motherfucker who needs to be tried is Ronald Reagan's ass. Pointed first to the CIA. That shit was cold. But Noriega on the payroll. All of a sudden shit changed right after 88. Yeah, ain't that strange? Something I've gone too far. But if you wanna go to war, I'll take you to war. They don't care about niggas on welfare. As long as that kind ain't there. You got my keys on freeze. My city's on the sea.
The condition.
Really deep fell out, you can swatch that fast. Here's a hit in the head for your ass.
This shit hot.
Brutality is not formality. They're kicking the ass and we're
This shit hot. It is. This shit hot. You need to know what's wrong with speaking.
All of a sudden they're snapping necks, putting niggas in check, making threats, saying I'm next. I laughed at a motherfucking lawman. Without the peace, bitch, you're nothing but a raw man. You couldn't hang if we were capping out project. Somebody taking right and taking us something.
This shit, man. Well, hold on. This is Low Cop Zone, Black Low Cop Zone, the official political, or one of the official political education and recruitment platforms for Black community control of the police. Today, the theme of the main presentation is fuck your Second Amendment. We want self-government, and specifically Black self-government. And we're gonna talk about that because there are a lot of forces in the world who represent a certain sector of our movement for African liberation, who justify on an ideological level their possession and usage of guns on the Second Amendment or the U.S. colonial constitution. So we want to talk about that, and because some of those forces have expressed a certain kind of unity with Kyle Rittenhouse and his shooting of three protesters against the police shooting of Jacob Blake. So it's important that we don't get things tangled and twisted in terms of our politics, because if we're not clear, if we don't have a certain kind of political education, then we can find ourselves uniting with something that's against our own interests. So, but there's more to say about that than just the relationship that these forces might have with Kyle Rittenhouse, but it speaks more to the ability to validate the U.S. Constitution, you know what I'm saying? And to recognize that as the basis for your actions is a way of being complicit with the dictatorship of the colonial capitalist ruling class and state. Because at the end of the day, the police only allow you to use your so-called firearm in their own interest. They're never going to allow you to use your gun to shoot the cops. So it's important that we understand how all of this works. Also, we want to be clear on this. I can't even get into it right now, love. I'm sorry. Hold up. Let me see that. It's in my coat on it. I can't do it right now. But see me later on, all right? Seriously, like around 9:15 when I'll be done. So anyway, it's important that we also address the trials of Kyle Rittenhouse and of the murderers of the three white men who murdered or lynched Ahmaud Arbery. Because not necessarily because either of these incidents was abnormal in terms of the history of colonial capitalist violence. And I do place the shooting by Kyle Rittenhouse in the category of colonial capitalist violence, because he stood in defense. He said in court that he was standing in defense of the private property of the capitalists, you know what I'm saying? And he shot those who he perceived to be in unity with the movement that was in some way contributing to the struggle for African liberation or Black people's rights. So that's important to say, you know what I'm saying? But again, there's nothing abnormal about the fact that black people getting shot by police or even regular white people in society today. There's nothing abnormal about that, but what made it extraordinary was the fact that both of these cases, of course, went viral, and there were, in terms of, the ability of the masses to see it all at the same time, as opposed to it trickling around the internet and not really, be viral. And the reason why its viral nature is important is because the recent history has shown us that African rebellion occurs in response to viral displays of police and colonial violence against black people. It's fair to say at this point that when there's enough YouTube or social media coverage of the killing, that there's gonna be black rebellion going on throughout the country. So, and we about that because part of the basis of black power and black self-determination is in the resistance of the masses. However, we also recognize that it's not enough just to resist as such, but to resist in a way that is contributing to long-term strategic objectives that will result in the seizure of state power in the hands of the same forces that are rebelling and protesting and whatnot, But now they are tied to an organized struggle to take power in the name of the black community and wield that power to advance a new type of public policy that promotes the principles of reparations and economic development for the black community, as opposed to police containment and military occupation. So we always want to be in a summation of those incidents that come in that category in terms of their potential to spark mass rebellion. And we also want to sum up the way both of the trials went down, because I think we can say that there is a significant sector of the African community and even the white population. There are forces, the white left and the African petty bourgeoisie, who both of whom are aligned with imperialism, will use these trials as a platform upon which they can win the masses to their reactionary politics. We saw that with Al Sharpton when the defense lawyer asked that he be removed from the room, and that all spotlight on Al Sharpton, and we've seen Sharpton mobilize a lot of black people in concert with unions and other church-like organizations, but he has the ability, he commands or influence over a certain sector of our community, and it's important that we expose Al Sharpton and this trial and from an African internationalist, African working class perspective. So that's why we're doing this shit, so that we don't get misled and whatnot, as it relates to how the state and the ruling class wants you to understand these trials. So, this is the reason why we are addressing this particular subject right now. Another thing that I want to say off the rip is that because, white people are not going to lead the revolution. And we're not going to find resolution to the contradictions that we face as an oppressed people by conceding leadership and waiting for the courts to decide what is and what is not just. So it's important that we use this and sum up this entire question as a means of winning the people to the struggle, organized struggle for power in our own hands as a community. But more than that, we want to be clear that because the white left will try to sum up the murder or the shooting and the killing of these 3 white activists as evidence of the need to consolidate a united front, an anti-racist front, where supposed quote unquote white and black people unite on this equal kind of plane against the Trump supporters and forces like Kyle Rittenhouse. Because there's a sector of the white left right now that is attempting to sum up the shooting of these 3 white boys as evidence of some type of vanguard nature of even white people in this whole struggle against racism in society and white nationalism and Trumpism and fascism, etc. So I just want to say off the rip that we do not believe that the revolution that will free black people necessitates solidarity from the white community. although we do believe that it is the principal thing to do, and it is in the long-term material interests of white people and white so-called workers to unite under the leadership of the Revolutionary Party of the African working class and the struggle to overturn not just capitalism in general, but capitalism in its current form, which is colonialist capitalism, capitalism which is organized around colonialism and imperialism, the domination of the white oppressor nation over all of the oppressed nations. So the only way to overturn capitalism as it exists today is to overturn colonialism, and that is something that only the oppressed workers of human society, or the workers of oppressed nations in human society today, can lead. And white people historically have been proven to be incapable of leading the struggle against colonialism, because it is in their selfish and immediate interest to unite with colonialism because of all of the wealth that it has ensured them. So white people can't lead. And in fact, the three activists or the three protesters that Kyle Rittenhouse shot would not have been at a protest if it was not for the leadership of the African working class that set the tone for how struggle needs to look inside this country. White people, Black Lives Matter, etc., would not exist and or have any significance if it wasn't for the leadership demonstrated by the African working class, most recently as it was initiated in the resistance and the rebellions of Ferguson, Missouri. So that's important for us to say. But at the same time, again, we do believe that the white left needs to be exposed, and their attempt to unite or to win African people under the leadership of the white left, and using the killing of the three white guys as evidence of the equality that Black and white people experience under capitalism and fascism. So it's important that we make this distinction. And with that said, we also want to just say off the rip that we know that the primary function of the state in all of human society is to protect the status quo. And the colonial capitalist state responsibility is to protect the system of colonial capitalism, meaning to maintain the status quo, to make sure that production continues, that the workers go to work, but it's not just that simple, because the entire capitalist system rests upon the system of colonialism. So in order for white workers to even have a job in a factory or any other institution here, there must be straight up colonial oppression of African workers in Guinea, for example, who have to dig up or pick the rubber plant or dig up the bauxite that makes it possible for it to be transformed into commodities here in North America. And that African or Black people right here in the United States are part of the oppressed African nation. We are part of it, and we experience colonial oppression right here. And part of that oppression includes the refusal or the denial of African people to identify and unite and to claim national identity as African people. So that's important to say as well. So it's the state maintains the status quo in society. They keep the shit the same. They don't always use guns, right? But they know that in the final analysis, they gotta prevent uprising amongst the oppressed peoples and in all sectors of the society. They want to, the state's responsibility in society is to maintain the status quo and prevent such disruption. And even as it comes in the form of the protests that have involved participation from white people, and who white people have attacked the institutions, have participated in attacking private property of the capitalists, and the bourgeoisie is opposed to that as well. But it is opposed to the disruption of stability in general. And so this court, again, these trials bore the potential of disrupting the status quo in terms of how Black people would respond if the killers of Ahmaud Arbery were found innocent, for example. They know that that has political implications. If they let them three crackers get away with murdering Ahmaud Arbery, the state knows that that has serious political implications in terms of what will Black people do if that happens, you know? And even if that response doesn't come today, if they was found innocent, they know that it will come eventually, if not in the summertime, etc. They know this. At the same time, there's also the sector of the white community, the white population that has real criticisms of the current regime of the U.S. government under the leadership or the stated leadership of Joe Biden. These forces are often characterized as Trump supporters and all, commonly advocates of the Second Amendment and their right to bear arms and to use them against the government that they would refer to as tyrannical. So, but the U.S. Constitution that they reference is a legal document. It's a document that was written as the opinion of the slave owners and the colonists, and that's whose interest that law that they use as the justification for their right to use, carry, and use guns. That's the basis of it, and that was not only in the case of Rittenhouse, but also in the case of Ahmaud Arbery. Because remember, their initial legal defense, the three crackers that murdered Ahmaud, their initial legal defense was that they were in the process of carrying out a citizen's arrest, right? And so, and the citizen's arrest is a law that was introduced in the state of Georgia in 1863. It was written by a slave owner, and it was written specifically to give the general white population the ability to arrest an African who had run away from slavery. That's how the whole citizen's arrest law got its start. And the first legal defense that they put forth was that they were engaged in a citizen's arrest against Ahmaud Arbery. And this is their law. And if there was enough quote unquote evidence to support the fact that he was involved in a crime at the time, or what they would call a crime, then they would have said that the three white people are innocent of any crime. This is, and not only that, but this is what the police do. The police in many states, if not every state, have literally the right to use lethal force against somebody who they observe committing a crime or a felony. And what is a felony? The felony is the same. That term is in the same U.S. Constitution that gives these white people these rights to bear arms and whatnot. And these are laws that are defined and laid out to protect the status quo and to keep the African population under colonial oppression. That's how the citizen arrest law started. That's how the Second Amendment rights law started. I can quote you exactly what the Second Amendment says in terms of, shit. We should, we have it. But essentially it's saying that it's the responsibility of the citizens, who at the time was lily white and still are. The citizens have the right to bear arms to protect the free state. And if the so-called citizens or any faction or sector of the white population decides that the existing government is not representative of the free state, then they would use that part of the Constitution to organize a coup, as they did in January 6th. But again, what is the basis of the free state that they talk about in the U.S. Constitution? The state is based on land. This is land that's literally the land that was stolen from the indigenous people, right? That's the fucking land that the U.S. Constitution gives the white people the right to use guns to protect. So anyway, the point is that this is another aspect of the contradiction that the ruling class is confronted with, because January 6th represents part of the crisis of imperialism. It's not just, although it is primarily the resistance of African and oppressed people, that's the reason for all this shit, is because the slave is fighting back, taking the resources back, and that in itself is leading to more and more fracturing within the white power colonial state, because the forces who are not currently in power, quote unquote, are critical of the forces that are, in terms of their inability to keep the niggas in check. So that's the basis, essentially, of the struggles that you find occurring within the white oppressor nation, and even with the white ruling class itself. So that's important to say, comrades. But the point is that these are the two aspects of the deep and profound political ramifications that both of these trials or implications that both of these trials have on the future of the United States imperialist project. Real shit. That's essentially what the problem they're confronted with it represents on both sides. So this explains why they organized both of these trials at the same time. And not only did they organize them at the same time, but they organized them, as you can see, right before a quote unquote holiday. Not only a holiday as in what they call Thanksgiving, but an entire period or phase of the year where, you know, production looks a little different, you know what I'm saying, in terms of how that impacts social activity in the community. So all of this they use to create a certain kind of tone and again suppress the response and the righteous rebellion of the African working class. But the most important aspect of their strategy is the lack of revolutionary leadership to expose the fact that it is impossible for the U.S. government, the same U.S. government that allows police to murder black people every single day in these streets. In fact, a report came out stating that the police brutality is the 9th leading cause of death for young black men. The Malcolm X grassroots movement reported not too long ago that 2 black people are killed by the police every day in the United States. So this is not a small thing in terms of exposing the fact that the U.S. government has no legitimate authority, no moral authority to lead the process to determine justice for black people. And as it's been said already, what they refer to as justice is essentially the opinion of the ruling class, and that opinion is one that will ensure that African people do not engage in revolutionary struggle to overturn the relationship that we have with the community, with imperialism, white power, and the U.S. government. So these are all important things to say about the trial. You know, more can be said, but we dealt with the white people state, and you know, so, but I think we need to, you know, because listen, y'all. And this is where, you know, I guess it's really important at this point because, and I'm not just talking just to talk, like, it's important that if nobody else understands the historic development of the conditions right now, you know, we do. And that's important because there's going to come a time when it's going to be another viral incident, and the correctness of what we are saying now will be shown in our ability to carry it out in the results. And looking back, if we have to look in hindsight, you'll say Diop told you again, but the point is that, and we working on that. We working on that. Diop, you know, we working on that. But the reality is that we can do this. We can do this, y'all. So this is the thing. This white left show called Democracy Now! And this is getting back to the whole question of like the white left's you know, imposing its leadership, asserting its leadership, and the petty bourgeoisie as well, asserting its leadership over the African working class in terms of how we move in response to the police question and, you know, the viral incidents and whatnot. Because again, the question is not about a trial. You know, they can hold 1,000 trials and perhaps even, you know, find 2 of them guilty, and they'll dwell on that as some kind of evidence of how the system works and whatnot. So again, we have to be, you know, we got to get hip to this shit, not as a small sector of the movement, but as a community. And by hip, I mean not only having like a certain kind of mental or, you know, logical capacity to reject what you hear on Democracy Now! In a certain kind of way. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But more than that, to have the organizational capacity to move in your own interest, you know, not just to be able to say, oh, that's that technology, son. Not just to be able to say that, but to actually have an organization that enables you to move the right way. You know what I'm saying? And there's a difference between the two. And that's why I'm often like very self-critical about how Black No Cops Zone goes down, because we don't just want to do a talk fest, but it should have a relationship to practical work. But right now, all I can do at this point is to put forth certain organizational directives that are based on our summation of the conditions right now. So that's how we moving right at this particular moment. So, but anyway, getting back to this whole question of the interview in Democracy Now! When the white left in its attempt to assert its own leadership and make us move in a way that the way imperialism wants us to move, in a way that preserves the system of colonialism. And we don't have time to talk deeply about but we do have to say the contradiction is not fascism, it's colonialism, as the chairman was saying in this presentation that we just heard. So we don't have to go deep into that. But the point is that African people, and even if the term fascism is never used in this discussion, it's about the relations of power that we're really talking about. And as long as the question of concrete organizational power over the police or the armed forces in our community, then you're talking about just some kind of reform that will never solve the problem. They have 1,000 reforms, from body cameras that when it comes to trial date, it didn't work, or you forgot to turn it on. They have city community relations boards that can't do anything to discipline and determine what armed forces do in the black community. You have black cops and police chief that whose program and actions have been no different than any other police chief in the past. So you have all of these various forms of reform that or even defund the cops, right? But the existence of the police, like they said in Seattle, if they reject the proposal to disband the Seattle police, they'll just send the sheriff in. But the state will be in the lives of African people no matter what. And the only way that's going to change that is through revolutionary struggle. And that's what we're here to talk about building. So it's important that, we have our own way of moving around this question. And the interview that I saw with, so you have the white left that, and I should have done more research in terms of how it has tried to sum up some of these questions. But the most important thing is that, I was watching this Democracy Now! Thing. The movement against the symptoms of police occupation, right? The movement against this, what I mean by that, because the problem is that the police occupy the community and act as an instrument to deprive African people of the right to be a self-governing people. That's the primary question. And the movement, and so that occupation, which in itself is a form of or a manifestation of dictatorship in terms of rule without regard for law, but simply there to keep population control in a certain kind of way. The movement, and so that leads to police shooting black people. This is, what it's based in. The police shooting black people, and it's based in colonial capitalism. But this is what leads to the contradictions that we protest about: the police shooting black people, or choking black people, or stop and frisk, etc. But the primary problem is that the police is here. That's the problem, because they're not here as a consequence of our will. It's not like black people participated in some kind of voluntary program to leave Africa, come here, and live under the violent threat of overseers and police, right? This relationship that we have with the police has its origin in the United States and European imperialist white power attacking Africa. So, but again, this domination it manifests itself in a number of different ways. But just like when you get a cold, the germ is the problem, but it will result in sneezing and headache and achy, whatever. And I think we understand this. But the point is that we cannot allow for our class enemies and national oppressors to set the terms for how we struggle against these contradictions, because we can spend all of our time holding protests, but if we do not have a strategy to actually seize power, then that's all we'll ever do forever, because there's always going to be another police shooting that we have to fucking protest about. But if there is no actual strategy, concrete goals and objectives to define what the fuck are we even protesting for in the real world. And if we cannot unite the broader sectors of our movement around this not only goal, but the approach to the goal, then we never gonna solve the problem. But I think we are really honing in on the situation. You know, we like in boxing where you cut the ring and to get your opponent into the corner so that they have no way to escape, and you start digging in the body, right? And I think we are approaching that period because the protests, as they have manifested themselves in many cities, have been highly influenced by, well, not forces that represent the African working class. Although the African working class has participated in all of the protests, right? But in terms of the strategic goals of the protests, they have rarely been put forth in a way that promotes the long-term interests of the class in terms of power, and not only the demand itself, but the strategic approach. But at the same time, the bourgeoisie, as we said before, the ruling class is still concerned about the protests because they threaten stability, right? And they contribute to the crisis of imperialism. The more is protests and highways getting shut down, and cop cars getting burnt and shit, that has obvious implications for the economy, as well as for well, primarily for the economy and whatnot, but other things as well. But so it's important that we intervene in this process in a way that enables the people to move in our own interest. But part of doing that requires us to sum up or criticize the various sectors of leadership of the various sectors of this movement that I'm talking about right now. So, for example, I'm watching Democracy Now!, and they had the father and the uncle of Jacob Blake, the teenager that the Milwaukee or the Kenosha police shot and paralyzed. And, throughout the whole interview, it was a really important interview because these brothers represent, they are representatives of the victims of the class, of the victims of the police terror. But what was problematic about the interview was the fact that all it really said at the end of the day was that we need to be struggling for trials to put police on around police killing black people. And not to say that we are opposed to that demand, but there's a lot more that we can and must do in response to police killing black people and, again, police occupying our communities at all. So, but the white left in particular, and we talked about Sharpton, because these are all things, if we want to talk about these trials, this is what we really got to talk about, how they both serve as a platform upon which the various class enemies and the national oppressor of African people and African working class has utilized these trials as a means of attempting to win the African working class to some sector of imperialism. So you had that thing about how the primary, if not only, method of struggle should be around getting the government, the state, to put itself on trial for killing black people. So that was really all you could take out of that interview, to be honest. And that's a problem, because what we have to be able to say is that we want power to govern ourselves, to secure ourselves, as opposed to this. Clearly, after 400 years of police murdering us, it's clear that the U.S. government is incapable of protecting the interests of black people. In fact, it's the one that's doing it. So we have to be able to say that and point the people to the organization that has the plan and the leadership capacity necessary to take off with that demand. So, and not only that, but see, the thing is that the bourgeoisie, again, you talk about the protests, and part of why they are problematic, if it's all we do, is the fact that the protests, not only do they not have any goals, but strategically, because the police is a military force. The police is a military. The police is a military, right? And just as the Marines were occupying Afghanistan and Vietnam, etc., the police occupy the black community. And that's the reality of the situation. And in the final analysis, the Panthers didn't wage protests only in downtown, but they was in the community, engaged in the state. And the forum of protest for a number of reasons, because at the end of the day, the bourgeoisie already passed a lot of laws that restrict the people's ability to protest in certain sections of downtown and some cities. And those types of laws are going to continue to be carried out. And ultimately, it's going to become more and more, clashes between protesters and pigs in those sectors of the and of course, you can't defeat the police military in a head-on collision like that. So in terms of the long-term objectives or the goals of the protest as has been carried out thus far, they are going to change. They have to change. And we have to build the power up in the community itself to be able to not, because that's where the victims of the police shit is anyway. It's in the community. So you want to win the people who are being stopped and frisked and murdered to a particular kind of struggle and strategy that will build up black power, independent black community power that also has the ability to justify its own existence in the world, to justify its own existence in the world, and to ultimately to go to Haiti, to go to Ethiopia, and to win the people to build the same type of organization and crush the neo-colonial state that terrorizes us in places like I just mentioned. So this is all part of, the mission of black community control of the police. And I mean that. So now in response and part of, listen, y'all, the white left and the same forces that participated in many of the protests have also recognized, even if they do not let you know about it, they have recognized the futility of simply protesting and have actually begun to engage in more and more in electoral struggle as it relates to the police question. This is extremely important. This is extremely important. You got to know about this. You know what I mean? Because they not only going to protest, they might tell you only go to the protest to be like they, whatever, they ghetto pass or some kind of, evidence of the correctness of what they trying to get done, but they are engaged in all other forms of struggle. And the reality is that, and you can go to ballotpedia.org right now if you want to, and you have to do a little searching within its own website, but you will find that there's been at least 30 different laws, reforms passed throughout the United States around the question of police. You know what I'm saying? Everything from body camera laws to curfew laws to, even like what happened here in Philadelphia where now the police cannot stop you for a so-called low-level traffic offense. So these types of reforms have been going on a lot, and a lot more have been attempted, like what we talked about in Seattle. And so the white left is engaged in this form of political struggle in terms of reforming, but among none of these laws that the white left has been trying to get passed have been the demand for black community control of the police or independent, democratically elected, organization that will govern the process of securing the black community, or even if you want to use their own terminology, the communities that where the cops is doing the most. You know what I'm saying? Where the cops is doing the most. So none of the reforms that the white left have, when I mean the most arrests, right? The most stops and frisks. These are the areas where this law needs to be passed, where the pigs got to go, and the people must have the right to have its own black community control of police commission. It's a democratic, independent organization that has real power. Even as we chip away at the colonial police force, we do so as in such a way that elevates revolutionary democratic demands. So right now, in this particular moment, we would say that such a independent democratic organization has the power to hire, fire, train, and set disciplinary standards for police that violate the democratic rights of black people. You know what I'm saying? At this particular moment, we might say that, or we could say it a different way. But the point is that these demands objectively represent the revolutionary aspirations for the African working class to have real state power in its own hands. So, but it's important that, and see, the thing is, because these, but the white left doesn't understand the question completely. You know what I'm saying? So they'll do that, and they won't even tell you about it. You know what I'm saying? You never find the white left in your community, and generally speaking, that's even trying to win you to unity with these kinds of directives. But and at the same time, we as the Black is Back Coalition.org, we have and continue to hold an annual conference on the electoral process, the electoral school, where we train regular activists, black workers, etc., on how to run for office, so that they can use their position as a means to increase or improve the position of the black community as it relates to even public policy reform questions that also are consistent with revolutionary demands. Because if you was like in the city of Philadelphia, city council can propose a law and unite on it, but requires the mayor to sign off on it. And as part of the struggle for black community control of the police and any other revolutionary democratic reform that we want to pursue within the tactical restraints of the electoral process, you know what I'm saying? Like that could having a mayor that would sign off on the black community control of police ballot initiative or referendum would be in the interest of the African community. But what ensures that that project continues in its revolutionary trajectory is to have organization on the ground that is obedient not to the U.S. Constitution, but to the political goals of the revolution, and particularly as they are laid out in the 19-point platform of the Black is Back Coalition, the 19-point platform for black political self-determination. So the thing is that because even as and even as the police function as a military force in our community, and the whole topic of this discussion is fuck the Second Amendment. We demand black self-government, but we have to create the conditions to advance in the final analysis what must be a revolutionary armed struggle against the U.S. colonial capitalist state. But armed struggle is that which the masses of the people unite with, not only a small sector that understands these theoretical questions, but that is a decision and that is a action, a collective action taken on by the community because it meets up with the the present conditions that exist, where it is clear that black people have the right to have real state power, that we understand what it means, and that we have built the organizational capacity to advance and essentially to draw a gun line in the final analysis. So that is where the movement, the long-term objective of the movement must be. And part of what enables us to create those conditions is by when the protest occurs, to be at the protest with clipboards in hand and propaganda in hand that explains this position and that struggles even for organizational leadership within the numerous protests with the Black is Back Coalition, so that we represent one common front that can carry out this program for city council resolution passing, for one, and other objectives that we're going to talk about. But I want to be clear, because some would interpret what I just said as some type of validation with the U.S. government and some kind of reformist policy. But it's not that, because the ballot initiative struggle that we are talking about right now would, of course, raise up the demands that I just got finished talking about. But you can, as a community, you can actually, if you get enough petition signatures, you can demand that the local city council pass a certain of this resolution to which the petition is connected. And that would require them to put on the next general election the policy that you're trying to get run. So even as the white left has been running campaigns to force the police to wear body cameras and, you know, to force the police to go to sensitivity training, etc., they do so through this particular process of running ballot initiatives, which is something, again, that regular people can do. You can write the law, which we have already done, and then you can get petitions and then confront city council, not only with the signatures, but with the people to say that, for example, in the city of Philadelphia, city council just initiated law reform that now prohibits the police from being able to stop you for a low-level traffic offense. So the people, what we can and must do at this in this particular stage of struggle, in addition to other things that I'm going to mention in a minute, we can demand politically and justify. If you can get that type of reform passed, then you can certainly unite with the demand for the black community to have its own independent, democratically elected Black Community Control and Police Commission that has these said powers, right? And that even would be funded by the same budget that was formerly dedicated to policing the same areas in which Black Community Control and Police will be fought for. But at the same time we do that, we carry out and we make it clear that what we are struggle around this ballot initiative is simply a debate that we are demanding to occur between us and the colonial capitalist bourgeoisie as to whether or not black people, black community, where the most police work is going on, most police repression is occurring, have its right to have its own democratically elected. I mean, let's call it a question. If they want to start talking about all these reforms, let's call it a real question. Call it a real question, which is then why then can black people cannot have our own independent? We'll organize it. Don't worry. We'll organize it. In fact, we already got it and we got it as a consequence of the other work that we do to advance other revolutionary objectives. Because in the final analysis, again, the police is an occupying military, and we unite with the resistance of the people on a material level. This is why we unite with the protesters who were shot by Kyle Rittenhouse, and their stance, at least if you let him tell it, that they were damaging property, private property of the capitalists. So we unite with those forces. Why the hell would we be against white boys throwing bricks through bank windows? Why would we be opposed to that? Why would we be opposed to the white people fucking up cop cars and shit? Why would we be opposed to that? You know what I'm saying? We unite with that shit. But again, we also recognize that the problem in the final analysis that's facing black people is lack of power in our own hands. So, but the point I'm raising around protests and material resistance, whether it's bricks through windows, Molotov cocktails, or even cops getting shot, we understand that all such resistance contributes to the destruction of the colonial capitalist state. And that is what our goal is. We want the destruction of the colonial capitalist state. That's essentially what the goal of Black Community Control and Police is. You know what I'm saying? And so we, through the various tactics and strategies that we are discussing now, that we claim in open, in public, that we unite and we claim these tactics as our own, as a movement, as legitimate tactics of goddamn self-defense of the black community. And yes, we include shooting the police in that category. So, but it's important that we build a movement, a mass movement that wins every sector of the community, not only to the ideological unity, not only to ideological unity with such resistance, but in terms of building an organizational capacity to destroy the colonial state and to wield our own revolutionary state power. And we do that right now. For example, I was in a discussion with a comrade that had posted on their Instagram account. They put up a flyer, like a missing flyer. A young sister from her area, or I don't know if it was from her area, but it was a sister that she was younger and she was missing. And it was like one of those, it was, I think, New Jersey or some state. It said, you know, a $10,000 reward will be offered to anybody that can lead to the, you know, finding this woman. And, you know, and they give this, and if you have any information, call the such and such state police, you know. And I was telling the comrade, I don't think, not that I don't think, we should not do that. We should not promote, we should not encourage or tell directed people to call the cops. What we should do is do our best to get in touch with the family and organize them to say, look, you know, we know that the police don't give a damn about finding black people or doing anything else for us. And, you know, I haven't had time to do the research, but I know that the statistics in terms of the police finding black people who are missing are very low. I know this, and somebody can look it up. We need to know the actual numbers. So, but the point is that there's no evidence that even states that working with the police to find your loved one would even work, right? But not only would it not work, but it would work against our interests, because what the pigs do, we all know, is stop and frisk and use any justification to fuck with people, to fuck with black people, and to stop. Oh, hey, you look like the one, and you know you don't even look like this. But now they need to know your name and identity, and that. So we are part of what we say dual and contending power, which it doesn't require much resources to win the people to a position where we do not invite the state into our affairs. And instead, we organize ourselves to solve the problem in terms of finding the system. So, you know, that's an example. And this is the type of work that we carry out, even as we carry out a long-term strategy, which would include the ballot initiative work that we are discussing. But that's important. The reason why I'm really focusing, well, that I'm stressing this question of the ballot initiative is because, again, this is a struggle, a front upon which many forces are involved in. To be honest, I haven't had a lot of discussion, but I've had some, and it's not a secret that black people would be in favor, are in favor of what city council did in terms of stopping the pigs from being able to stop us for a low-level traffic offense. You know, I'm in favor of it. You know what I'm saying? We all in favor of that. But the reality is that we know they won't stop to solve the fundamental problem, because, I mean, even like literally a week after they passed that law, I witnessed the SWAT team invading somebody's home on a particular block in the community, you know? So, and I have it on video as well. But the point is that the military occupation goes beyond just so-called low-level traffic offenses. And so it's important. But the point is that being that these are reforms that speak to the material interests of the people, it's critical that the people attribute these victories to the revolution, which is, and to themselves as a social force, to the African working class. So this is why we do all of what we do. But when I am in a better position, we're going to really start, you know, excuse this expression, but we have to crack the whip. We have to dig in as a movement around, you know, focusing. We got to focus as a movement on concrete strategic objectives. And one of them, so that when the next incident occurs, wherever city it happens in, so that when the next incident occurs, we have concrete, we have the ability, because someone's going to say, you got to go, you know, get the law. If you want to say get the law changed, fine, but this is how the change must look. This is how the change must look. And that plan for the change does not contradict our revolutionary goals, but it simply provides another really crucial front upon which we make the struggle for black community control of the police, and therefore further deepening the connection and relationship between the material resistance and the activist resistance or electoral resistance, so to speak, that a sector of our movement and community is perhaps more prone to participate in. In fact, most people, you know, far more people will sign a petition, which is a very important and get others to sign a petition, which is a very important way of participating in the movement. But far more people will do that than will pick up an AK-47. And this is not to say that we don't got enough comrades that's ready to get busy in that fashion. But again, it's important that we recognize that there are various stations that the People's Army must fill in order to function correctly. And again, the work to win public opinion and certain organizational infrastructure around Black community control of police and its relationship to political economy that affects the Black community is just as important as the logistical aspects of armed struggle, essentially. So, but this allows for both sectors of the movement and resistance to have a concrete relationship with each other, and an open relationship with each other without compromising compromising our long-term goals and objectives. Real talk. So this is the way. This is really the way. And you gotta win participation and unity with running your own ballot initiative process, and to build on the ground the organization necessary to fight. So, and that's the best way I can put that. And that's how, and you know, I don't know. I mean, what do people think? So I know that there's I don't know why, but I just feel the inclination to have a question and answer. Hold on. I want to know what people think. Okay. Real talk, what you think? You know what I'm saying? Because if you, let's put it like this. I don't think anybody criticized city council. I don't think anybody criticized or called on city council to recant that shit that they did. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't hear there one revolutionary tell city before they brought it to the mayor. I didn't hear one revolutionary criticize city council for that shit, that law that they proposed. Seriously. And that's not necessarily a criticism, but what it does say is that you cannot say that what I'm putting forth is in some way telling the masses or even telling the petty bourgeoisie. But if somebody disagrees, I want to hear it. And more importantly, if you have a better idea and strategy, I want to hear that too. Because in that ties, you know, again, I don't unite with the assumption that we have a right to bear arms because it's in the U.S. Constitution. And the fact is that there's a sector of our movement and community who are who use or point to the Second Amendment as the basis for their right to carry guns. But the question is, where in this equation does the shooting begin? That's the real question. I mean, like, at what point does it begin? And so what I'm saying is that you create the conditions for not just like an individual that, you know what I'm saying, just, you know, does something in a spontaneous fashion, but in terms of collective resistance. At what point does that begin? That's the question. You know what I'm saying? And there has to be, because even if it does begin, and what I mean by individual spontaneous shit, I mean not something that doesn't have a relationship to political goals. Because what made Cuba significant was not the fact as such that you had armed revolutionaries that engaged in armed struggle against the existing state, neo-colonial state, but that you had revolutionaries that were armed with a revolutionary program, and that said, we fight for this. You know what I mean? And we won't stop fighting until this is achieved, right? So if you're serious about making a revolution, if you're serious about, you know, Black political self-defense, then at some point you have to have the ability to wage revolutionary armed struggle. And by revolutionary armed struggle, we mean armed struggle that is connected to revolutionary political objectives. So I don't know what else to say. But what I do know is that if there's so much motion, and I might be wrong, the only reason why I'm saying that this whole ballot initiative shit is even legitimate is because the movement runs a damn school that shows people that run for office how to do so. And we as a movement have run a lot of forces for office, right? Public office. Our movement did that, right? So I'm saying and we use the justification for doing that to saying that the elections is the primary means through which the masses of black people participate in political struggle in the United States. It's through elections. So we have a responsibility to intervene in the electoral process. That's the line. That's our line, you know? So the approach to the police shit, it can't be any different. It's not that it shouldn't be, but it can't be any different. Because again, if it was different, then I would have liked to have heard somebody attack city council for, you know what I'm saying, trying to solve black people's problems with the police in this way. Nobody did. Nobody said, oh, no, we shouldn't support that. We should denounce that. That's a whack-ass method of struggle. That's not a legitimate demand. Rah. Nobody said that, and nobody should say that. So we have to be materialists, right? On some real shit. I don't know what to tell y'all. I want somebody to come see me if you disagree. I really do. You know what I'm saying? Because I stance ain't never changed. And you know I'm spitting science. And in fact, well, I won't even keep going. So anyway, if there is struggle, if there is disagreement, I want to hear it. The fact of the matter is, y'all motherfuckers broke my stick. I've been locked and loaded. Fact of the matter. Uhuru. That's black no cop zone. Uhuru. Shit.